Welcome to Rob and Tony's Cinematic Adventure. I'm Rob Wilson.
And I am Tony DePuano.
Now, in the last episode, we did Back to the Future, and now we're going to move on to the sequel, the first of the sequels, Back to the Future Part 2. We're going to talk about the continuing adventures of Marty McFly traveling through time in a time-traveling DeLorean.
And Doc Brown's travels.
Yes, Doc Brown travels with him in this one, too. And before we get started, spoiler alert for anybody who has not seen Back to the Future Part 2 yet, we will be talking about the entire movie. So beginning, middle, and end, all of the fun stuff that happens in it. And if you have not seen the movie and you don't want to be spoiled, then go ahead and pause the podcast, go watch the movie, and come back and continue listening. If you don't care about spoilers, then just keep listening. Hopefully we can give you a good discussion. Now that that's out of the way, Back to the Future Part 2. The movie starts out replaying the final scene of Back to the Future, like shot for shot, redoing it.
Right.
One of the 3 times they had to film that scene.
Shot for shot, but with an older Michael J. Fox.
Yes, with an older Michael J. Fox and a different actress playing Jennifer.
Everything else is the same.
Yep. So we found out at the end of the first movie, the very end, that the DeLorean can fly now. And it doesn't need plutonium in order to create the nuclear reaction that generates the 1.21 gigawatts of electricity that allows the time machine to travel through time.
We also learn that something has to be done about their kids.
Yes.
About Marty
and Jennifer's kids. And an interesting little addition to the scene that we didn't see at the end of the first movie because it cut out right after the DeLorean disappeared in the sky. And just as they were doing that, what we found out at the beginning of this one is Biff is running out of the house to show Marty the matchbooks that he had made for his auto detailing business. And then he sees the DeLorean flying away and thinks it's odd that there's a flying DeLorean, which then comes back later in the movie. It's referenced again later.
It's a interesting little detail. It's kind of funny. It's like a little Chekhov's gun in a way.
Yeah.
Like you said, it comes back. But it's a good setup. Like you said, it's the little detail there. And it's an important detail, not just that Biff sees it. It really helps. You're not going to know it quite yet, but it does set up kind of the main driving force of the rest of the movie. And movies, really, because Back to the Future 3 is also going to blend right into the whole trilogy as part of the story. Because Biff's going to be a major factor in the rest of the series.
Yes, he will.
And it's it's a good start. It's a good way to jump back into it before they kind of do the whole credit crawl as they're flying through the clouds of the future, right? But it's a good start, and it's interesting. I want to know what you think. Before we kind of get into the nitty-gritty of everything, what you think overall of at least the second one itself. Since we're going to see, it's very much almost 3 movies itself within one movie.
It really is.
It really is like a beginning, a middle, and the end, and they're all vastly different. And it's interesting how very different. I wouldn't say thematically, but just tonally.
I mean, that's also because
setting-wise, obviously.
That's also because it's 3 different time periods that it takes place in.
Right, yeah. Because it does take place in the alternate present, the future, and the past.
I mean, the first couple of minutes are in the regular present.
For Marty, it's really all 24 or 36 hours. Which gets weird when we get to the end of it, because he's really reliving something that he just happened to him the prior day, for the most part. But I guess the thing we can talk about, because we're going to get into details, is... I think, let's say the point for a few minutes from now. How about we go into kind of what happens next? We go through the credits, the flying in the clouds of the future, and Jennifer's there, right?
Yes, Jennifer is in the car with them.
And so now she's someone else now that's also observing this whole time travel thing. And she has I guess, kind of a typical teen reaction. See our future self, right? She's like, I'm going to see her wedding. Because what girl wouldn't want to see her future wedding, right?
Yeah, but after they're flying around dodging the other flying cars, they land in an alley, and Doc ends up using a device to knock Jennifer out so that she doesn't mess up the future.
Yeah, he doesn't want her to run into her future self.
Because if they see their future selves, there's a potential
universe-altering paradox.
Yeah. that could disrupt the space-time continuum. And so Doc is very careful not to allow either Jennifer or Marty to see their future selves.
Yeah, and he's very specific about this with Marty, which really makes sense.
Because, I mean, Marty understands
obviously
what's going on.
With that.
Marty has traveled through time before. He understands.
Yeah.
And he's been hanging out with Doc for however long they've been friends. So he understands Doc on a level that Jennifer can't.
But this is where, this is just, I guess, in some ways like nitpicking. So it seems like they're flying awfully fast through the sky. And yet they're traveling very short distances within Hill Valley.
Well, I mean, to be fair, sorry, I can't say that without, damn you, Letterkenny, making me say it like that. Anyway, they were going 88 miles per hour when they first got to the future.
Yes.
So that's, when they first got there, that's why they were traveling so fast, because they had to reach 88 miles per hour in order to travel through time.
Right. So, but what's the speed of the flying in the sky? What would be the speed limit flying in the sky?
I don't know. That's a good question.
There's a kind of sort of unanswered questions. It's like 30 years is a giant leap in technology. And it seems like, I don't know at what point they achieved that. I mean, they've already built sky highways.
Yeah.
But then still Goldie Wilson's grandson does auto conversions so your car can hover. So there's definitely still enough people out there that have
have regular
19
road driving cars.
They have a 92 Corolla with 400,000 miles on it. It's like, I want to get this converted to fly through the sky.
Yeah, I mean, Doc got a 1981 DeLorean hover converted.
Anyway,
so
just random thought. There's all these random thoughts I have about the future, which is 30 years in the future, 2015.
Well, 30 years in the future from 1985, where they started. It's 7 years in our past. So
really details about that, because they drop right in the middle of downtown Hill Valley. It's interesting because I think the 85 Hill Valley and the 55 Hill Valley kind of felt very natural. The 2015 one definitely felt like a movie set.
Yes, it did.
But the clock tower's still there. It's still broken. They haven't fixed it yet. Still 10:04, 60 years later.
Steven Spielberg's son has picked up the reins of making Jaws movies.
That's right.
And Jaws 19 is out.
It's just kind of funny because they have a big hologram shark trying to eat them. And the effects of it is so bad.
And Marty even comments on that. He says the shark still looks fake.
The Texaco is still there. You have the World Series, right? Talk about the Cubs and Marlins.
Mm-hmm.
Well, not really the Cubs and the Marlins. Talk about Chicago and Miami. Marlins did not exist yet when the movie was made. And the Cubs were still, at that point, I guess, about 80 years since they'd won a World Series, which became a big deal later around the time the Cubs won the World Series.
Yeah, because
in 2016,
yes,
not
in
2016.
So the movie was a year off, which is still that's still impressive. That they made the movie in the 80s and predicted that the Cubs would win the World Series in 2015, but they won it in 2016. They were only a year off.
The actor, though, in that scene where he's seeing that's trying to get him to save the clock tower, he's also in the 1955 section of the movie. And he's the guy that's giving Biff his car back after it's been repaired.
Oh, you're right. It is. It is the same guy.
So the question is he the same character? Just, now he's 75, 80 years old or something, whatever.
He could be. He could be the same character. I mean, he is older in 2015.
Yeah, no, he's definitely an old dude in that movie. Doc talks about they have all this type of stuff to make yourself live longer. Like Doc says he gets a new spleen, and they have that whole face mask.
That facial rejuvenation thing that... Yeah, he put the fake mask on so that Marty would recognize him, and then he takes it off and he looks exactly the same.
Which is also one question: is how old is Doc Brown? It's never established.
No, they didn't.
An adult in 1955 and an adult in 1985.
Yeah, who looks more or less the exact same. Maybe a couple extra wrinkles in the in 85.
I think Christopher Lloyd's kind of one of those guys. Always kind of looks the same age.
Yeah, kind of like Steve Martin.
Yep.
Just those people who gray earlier in life.
Yeah.
They'll have a full head of gray hair when they're in their 30s.
So that's the setup, right? We get back to Central Hill Valley. In a lot of ways, it's In a little way, as you'll see, it kind of follows basic kind of formula of the first one. At least certain beats of it. He sees an antique shop first, right? Because Doc gives him the instructions that he has to tell his son, Marty's son. Well, not tell him, I guess, right? He's going to replace his son in a cafe.
Yes, because Marty and his son look exactly the same. It's not just your typical, the son looks like the father, but you can still tell the two apart. Marty's son looks exactly like Marty. Like they could be twins.
We didn't really even get into this in the first one. Like Marty and his dad, like Crispin Glover and Michael J. Fox, at least within the movie, it's very believable that they're father and son.
Yeah, it is.
Anyway, that's the big news then, right? His son gets arrested because of Biff's grandson.
Yes, because of Biff's grandson, Griff, who gets Marty McFly Jr. to join him in his illegal activities. And so
we need to talk about this. How does that family keep reproducing in that town? They all stay in Hill Valley. They seem like the notorious enough of that, but just all a bunch of just bad guys, bad neighbors.
Yeah, that is a good question. And I was also thinking, so there is, in each of the time periods, there is some version of Biff, whether some relative of Biff, whether it's an ancestor or descendant, or Biff himself. But there's not one in 1985. Because in 55, it was Biff as a teenager. In 2015, it was Biff's grandson. Where's Biff's kid? Where's Biff's son in 1985? Or maybe he had a daughter, and that's why she's not in 1985, because maybe she's nice. She's not a bully. But there's never any mention of Biff having a child in 1985.
So the only other family member we get to meet, beside the one from each time period, we don't even get to meet her. We just hear her voice. Is his grandmother.
Yes.
Which happens later in the movie. But
yeah.
Yeah.
Which
it's a good question.
Would that then be, stepping into Back to the Future 3, would that be Buford Mad Dog Tannen's daughter?
Yes.
Or would she be married to his son? Did Mad Dog have a son or a daughter?
And there's a whole other point to this that we'll get into part 3 about that lineage that I also have questions about.
But yeah, I thought it was interesting that there's no Biff equivalent in 1985, except for just adult Biff that was George's bully growing up.
Every single one of them is criminal.
Yeah.
I mean, Biff tries to rape somebody, and then Griff definitely seems like he's a thief. And Mad Dog is a thief and a murderer.
Yeah, it's a very it's a great legacy that that family has.
But that's the setup. That's why Doc practically comes back. Something has to be done about their kids. They're kids. We haven't mentioned that there's also a daughter.
Yes, there's a daughter
who also looks just like Michael J. Fox.
Because she is Michael J. Fox.
Michael J. Fox.
Because rather than having Elizabeth Shue play their daughter, Michael J. Fox plays both of their kids.
I mean, they really had two options. Leah Thompson came back for the movie too.
Yes, she did.
She also could have played her.
Yeah, she could have.
But they got Michael J. Fox.
Yeah, but the person
she gets arrested because she tries to break her brother out of jail. So that's
in the original 2015
chain of events.
The 2015 that they're trying to change.
So that's that's a chain of events that causes Doc Brown to go back and get Marty and Jennifer to bring them back to 2015 to stop that from happening.
So in 2015, while Marty is talking to the old man who wishes he had a time machine so that he could go back in time and put some money on the Cubbies because they had just won the World Series, you had mentioned the antique store that Marty was looking in that had a bunch of vintage 1980s antiques.
Little handheld vacuum. They had, what else was in there?
Oh, there was I
remember the Dustbuster.
Yes, there was a Dustbuster. There was a JVC video camera, which was the same video camera that Marty was using in the first one. There was it a Jaws video game or a Jaws VHS tape in there?
I just watched this the other day. I should know. I always remember the Dustbuster.
Yeah.
She talks about the Dustbuster. And then she talks about the dust jacket on
the Sports Almanac.
Anyway, that's, his idea is like, oh yeah, I could, when I go back to 1985, because the Almanac spans the years 1950, 2000, right? So he's figuring, I can figure out who wins the Super Bowl in 1992.
All right, so there is There's a case of Perrier water in the window. Right. There is a Jaws, looks like the Jaws video game. There is a TV. There's a Macintosh computer. There is the jean jacket that Marty was wearing in the first movie. There's a Roger Rabbit stuffed animal.
Reminds
There's
me
a lava lamp.
Roger Rabbit. You know who directed the Roger Rabbit movie?
Robert Zemeckis.
That's right, 1988. That before Back to the Future Part 2.
Robert Zemeckis, who's of course the director of the Back to the Future movies.
Back to the Future, right?
Yep.
I mean, it was Christopher Lloyd was in both movies.
Yep.
Both movies. The other person I was thinking about when he said that is the guy that voiced Roger Rabbit has a cameo in Back to the Future Part 2, Charles Fleischer, and he is the guy that we were just talking about that wished he had the money to go back and bet on Chicago winning the World Series. So he's the guy that prompts it. So
okay,
the double tie, because they were double ties.
Yes, they were double ties in the future for some reason.
And kids wear their pockets inside out.
Yeah. How do you put things in your pockets if they're inside out?
Power laces.
Yes.
Power laces are cool.
Power laces are cool. And you remember in 2015 when Nike actually came out with those?
Yep.
And they cost like hundreds of thousands of dollars for a pair?
Of course. All the people that bought every single pair of Jordan were probably the ones that...
Yep.
So the other thing they had, though, in 2015 is the cafe that was 1950s was just your normal 50s style cafe.
Yeah, but in 2015...
They don't really show it in the 80s, so we don't know what it was like in the 80s.
They do. It was a gym in the 80s. Because remember, that's when he was when he was skateboarding.
Correct.
At the beginning of the movie, when he was holding on to the back of the Jeep, and he was waving to the ladies who were jazzercising in there.
So
maybe they were just doing aerobics. Either way, he was waving to them.
And now it's a retro cafe. It's an 80s
yes,
cafe.
It is the Cafe 80s.
And Doc is right that it's poorly done.
Yes, but you can't go wrong with when he walks in there. He's greeted by Max Headroom.
Yep, and Michael Jackson back when he was still black.
Yep,
his waiter. Ronald Reagan is a waiter.
Yep.
Now they're digital waiters, right? And they're bulky TVs with really bad animation.
Yeah, just like Max Headroom. But that's where we see...
One of my favorite little things in there is they got the arcade game, right?
Yep, which I was just about to talk about this too, yeah.
And one of those kids is who? You know who
that is Elijah Wood in his first movie appearance, his first credit, Elijah Wood.
You mean you have to use your hands? Like a baby's toy. Which it's like a foreshadow into Back to the Future Part 3.
Yes, because he...
always loved having little Elijah Wood, his first little role, not really even a cameo. He's not even just, child actor, got this little role, and later went on to be Huck Finn and Jojo Baggins.
Yep, and North. Can't forget about North.
And North. North.
He was also in Forever Young.
He was, and The Good Son.
That too.
He helped kill Macaulay Culkin.
But, yes, he did. But so what I think is nice is Marty tells the kids that he was a crack shot at that game, and then he goes and he plays it, and it tells him that he's a crack shot. So Marty was right that he was. Right. Now, did he say that he was a crack shot because the game always brought up that he was a crack shot, or did he just was using crack shot as the term for being a good shot?
So, but proceed to know, it's interesting how they kind of combine the diner scenes here, right? So, he does that. He orders Pepsi, right? And it comes up from the bar. And then
it's the futuristic bottle.
Biff sees him, right? And it's old Biff. Like, Biff is an old man. And, of course, Marty's getting a little bit confused because he's thinking of Biff recognizing him as Marty McFly. Biff is thinking that he is Marty McFly's son, Marty McFly Jr., right? So, in a lot of ways, it becomes very similar to the first diner scene Back to the Future. Because then Griff comes in, angry at his grandfather, because his grandfather is still detailing cars for a living. 30 years later, I told you never to come in here.
And Griff has cybernetic implants, and there's something wrong with them, so he's a little bit crazy.
He just might be crazy. More than the implants. But, we find, it's Marty's like a total wimp. even different than like George. George just rather just avoid the confrontation.
Yeah, but Marty Jr. still he apparently doesn't know how to wear his jacket because one of the sleeves is not fitting. It's all accordioned out.
Even though they're auto-fitting jackets, they dry themselves also.
Mm-hmm. But anyway, for some reason, Marty Jr. maybe he broke that sleeve, so that sleeve doesn't auto-fit. I don't know. So Marty Sr.
takes the opportunity.
He takes Marty Jr.'s place and tells Griff that he's not going to go with him, which then causes Griff to get angry.
To call him chicken.
And Marty, of course, doesn't like being called chicken. Mm-mm. Nobody calls Marty chicken. Nobody.
Just like nobody puts baby in the corner, nobody calls Marty a chicken.
Yeah.
And Marty tries to do the whole fake out thing. Griff was able to stop it.
Yep. What's that? And then he swings at Griff.
Now this is where we get into the second dire scene from the first movie.
Yep. Marty swings at Griff. Griff catches his hand, doesn't allow him to punch him.
But he knees him in the balls.
Yeah. Knees him in the balls and runs. And this is back to the chase from 1955. The same kind of thing. Marty runs up to a couple of kids that are on hover scooters, grabs one of them, pulls the handlebars out of it, and turns it into like a hoverboard, skateboard type thing, and tries to hoverboard away from Griff and his buddies. And they, of course, have hoverboards that they're chasing him on. Marty ends up going over the water in front of the clock tower, and he has no propulsion.
A very powerful hoverboard to go over water.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, you have to have a hoverboard with like boosters on it. Because, which Jason Scott Lee, who plays one of Griff's cronies, points out that hoverboards don't work on water. Not unless you have power. So while Marty is just stuck in the middle of the koi pond outside of the clock tower, and Griff walks up with his case and drops out his hoverboard, his Pitbull hoverboard, and it's got power. So his buddies,
they can hitch a ride on it too.
They pull out cords and they're all holding on to him, and he pulls them over. He pulls them across the water. But right as Griff is about to swing his extendable bat at Marty, Marty jumps off of his hoverboard and into the water. And just the force of Griff's swing throws them all out of whack, and they all go flying into the clock tower through the windows in the front of the building. But did you know, and this is visible in the movie, so the stunt woman who played the female group member of Griff's, the lady part of his gang, when they're all flying into the glass, the cable that she was attached to that was pulling them through the glass, they missed the mark when they were pulling it, and she ran into the column in the front of the building and ended up like breaking her back or something. Like became very seriously injured because of it. So that stunt performer ended up getting really hurt from that stunt, and they used that shot in the movie. So if you look at it when you're watching, when they go flying through the window, you can see her hit the column before she goes through the window.
I did not know that. I'm glad you brought her up, though. I mean, it's beyond that being, like, I had no idea about that. It's kind of a really cool fact. His cronies in the 50s, there's no girl. There's no girl in the 1880s, third. Right?
And there's no girl in alternate 1985 that we're going to be getting to in a little bit later in this movie.
But it makes sense, right? You know, they progressed to the point now, like, there might be these chicks that are boys.
Yeah.
That be hanging around. They're not just being girly girls or whatever it might be. It's kind of one of those nice little nods and change, what the future might be.
I mean, who knows? That might be Griff's sister.
It could be Griff's sister. I mean,
the rest of the family is criminals.
So they fly through, though. They get arrested. USA Today,
the headline changes. Martin McFly Jr. no longer gets arrested.
There's always that kind of item that they're looking at to see if it changes. Photograph the siblings in the first one.
Mm-hmm.
And
newspaper headline.
It's a headline. There's also facts.
Yes, the facts.
Doesn't really, and there's also.
But the facts doesn't really change until the third movie.
Headline. There's two of the newspapers, I guess, also that we don't see until the alternate 1985. That become the second part of the movie. That becomes the thing to focus on. See if they change. So that changes. That happens. He runs back in the dock. I see that future history can change, right?
Yeah.
But then they see the cops find Jennifer.
Yes, the cops find Jennifer in the dumpster where Doc and Marty left her.
Recognition, which kind of makes sense, right? It's a plausible future technology. And they're going to take her home. So they have to follow the cops. But Marty and Jennifer get to see where they live as husband and wife. But during all this...
And they live in Hilldale. Which in 1985 was the real ritzy part of town. It was the area where all the rich people live.
1955, we see Lyon Estates.
Yes, Lyon Estates as the
cool new neighborhood that's being built. Hilldale is like that in 1985.
Yes, and Lyon Estates, of course, is where Marty and his family live in 1985. But Hilldale is the rich part of town in 1985 that by 2015 has turned into the slums.
Which seems kind of accelerate for a place like Hill Valley. But in 1985, as we find out, there's people with Rolls Royces live in Hilldale.
Yeah, so Marty...
Before they go into Hilldale, they talk about all of it, and Doc finds the almanac, gets angry at Marty about trying to get financial gain going in the future.
That he didn't invent the time machine for financial gain. He invented it to learn about time, learn about different eras and to explore different times, but not for personal gain.
Right. So, and I think, it's an interesting point that gets brought up. And I think there's growth on both of them in that respect of what happens, because I think Doc does end up obviously at the end get personal gain from it. But he grows wiser also. And they both grow wiser.
But Doc throws the almanac in the trash, and Biff overhears their conversation.
Is he just is hiding in some random place?
He's hiding. In the alley? He just happens to be hiding in the alley, and
old man's just kind of hiding like that.
Yeah, and that's where the whole reference to him seeing the flying DeLorean in 1985 comes into play, because he sees it again. He's like, a flying DeLorean? I haven't seen one of those since. And of course it was since 1985, but that's how he knew.
If in 1985, when there's no flying cars,
you would think that you would remember seeing a flying car.
DeLoreans weren't that common either, but that'd be like a very vivid memory. That when you see one again, you're like, I exactly remember everything that was happening the last time I saw that.
You'd think, but maybe Biff has a terrible memory.
Kind of stupid.
A little bit. But yeah, so that's he somehow puts two and two together that Doc and Marty are time travelers. I mean, he did overhear the conversation about Doc creating the time machine, but still Biff might not necessarily be able to understand that conversation. But yeah, so he gets the almanac from the trash and follows Doc and Marty to Hilldale. And in the meantime, the cops take Jennifer to their home in Hilldale.
They drop her off. They're making all these bad comments. The cops are female cops, not male cops, which is also kind of like another nod to like feature, because in 1955 and like 80s are definitely more woman cops. So just another kind of small nod of things changing. But yeah, they drop off to the home, and she wakes up, and obviously she's very confused, and we start to see a house of 2015.
Yeah, so she ends up hiding in the closet because she doesn't want to be seen by the family in there. But her daughter, played by Michael J. Fox, hears her voice.
Mom.
Comes walking out of her room.
But then Marty's parents come in, and they brought pizza.
Of course, George in this movie is not played by Crispin Glover.
No, he has left.
Yeah, Crispin Glover got into a big dispute with Bob Gale and Robert Zemeckis, and so he was not in the second movie. So they had someone else that they made up to look like him.
Leah Thompson is still Lorraine.
Yes, only in older woman makeup than she was in the first movie.
Yes. Well, there's a whole conversation about how Marty always gets angry. Called Chicken, how that affected his life, and how he gave up his music career because of getting in a car accident with a Rolls Royce.
Yes, with a Rolls Royce.
Someone dared him to a drag race.
By the way, George in this movie was played by Jeffrey Weissman, or Weissman, however you want to pronounce that.
Okay.
Yeah, so future Marty ended up having to give up his dream of being a rock star because he got into a car accident with a Rolls Royce.
And so it kind of sets up this kind of dual thing where kind of had in the first movie his dad at first kind of being this failure, then this pushover, and now Marty's kind of a failure as well.
Yep.
Kind of for very different reasons. But, they draw the parallel. It's kind of nicely done, I think.
And so then we have a video call.
With Flea.
With Flea. Yes, with Marty's coworker, Needles, played by Flea.
Which is interesting. Obviously, they know Needles well, right?
Yes.
Because you can tell Marty knows him really well, seemingly beyond just being a coworker.
Yeah.
He
knew him as a child. He knew him growing up.
And remember, Jennifer's in the closet. She's overhearing this phone conversation. It's a video call, but much different than kind of what we obviously think of video calls now.
But Needles needs Marty to go in with him on some illegal activities.
Seems like probably embezzling funds from the
company.
Essentially.
So, yeah, embezzlement stuff. And so Needles calls Marty a chicken, and of course nobody calls Marty a chicken. So Marty gives his thumbprint as authorization for the transfer of funds, and immediately Marty's boss calls him because he saw the transfer and fires him on the spot.
One of the things I like about this scene, one of the little details, is like when the phone call comes up, gives the person's name, their age, occupation, and then their likes and dislikes.
Yep. I love that. Yep.
Marty tries to spin it as like, oh, it was a sting operation. I was setting him up. His boss doesn't buy it, of course, and then gets fired. You are terminated.
Yep. And then for some reason they have a fax machine in the closet.
So my favorite lines, read my fax.
There's fax machines all over the house. And so they just start printing out "you're fired." And there's one in the closet right by Jennifer for some reason.
You're getting a coat.
So Jennifer sees the one that prints out in the closet, and she takes it and keeps it with her. But all it says is "you're fired." It doesn't have any other information on there, just "you're fired."
It's all in that really classic late 80s, early 90s printer paper.
Yes.
If you're old enough, you remember what we're talking about.
Yes, with the perforated edges with the little holes in there. Yeah.
But then his mom sees it, right? And she's like, what does this mean? What does this mean?
And then, of course, he tries to... Yeah, it's a joke fax, Mom. Some guys at the office are playing a joke. While everybody else is out of the room, Jennifer decides that it's time to try to get out of the house, but she doesn't know how to open the door because there's no doorknob. And that's just when Doc is standing at the window and tells her to put her thumb on the pad.
The window to the closet with a fax machine.
Yeah, so she gets out of the house and they go back to the DeLorean, but not before Biff stole the DeLorean.
And you gotta remember,
and right after he gets back into 2015 is when they get to it.
They play this aspect well because Doc tells Marty to stay with the DeLorean. So he doesn't want Marty to encounter his future self. And just to kind of protect the car, too. And he barely walks away from it.
Yeah, barely walks away from it. Biff gets in there and...
probably like 50 feet from it.
Somehow, Biff knows how to use the DeLorean. Like, he knows how to...
This is the point that I get to. Like, how does Biff
use the time machine?
To get to 88 miles an hour.
And you got to turn on the time circuits, and you got to set the time that you're going to, and... all of that. How does Biff know how to do that?
And how is he lucky enough to still have everything to get back as well? There's so many questions. Because he's a weak old man.
Which, I mean, they never really explained after Mr. Fusion was installed how many trips the trash will cause the DeLorean to be able to take. Because it was one trip per piece of plutonium.
Yes.
But we really only ever see Doc put the trash in Mr. Fusion once when they're in the driveway at Marty's house. We never see it again. So are we supposed to believe that one banana peel and the Miller High Life can and what was left in the can is enough to power the DeLorean, for however many trips they take for the rest of the series?
Good question.
Or do they have to refill it every trip?
It's every few trips.
Because there's no way that Biff would know to put trash in there.
Yes.
Now, it's possible that off screen... Doc could have put some trash in there while they were over by the dumpster in 2015.
Yeah, totally.
Just to prepare for their return trip. In which case, Biff wouldn't have had to put any in there because there would already be some in there. But if it's only a one-trip thing, then how did he know to do it to get back?
Yep.
Anyway, but what we find out later is that Biff had gone back in time to give his younger self the sports almanac to be able to make money on betting on sports events.
At this point, we just know that he got into the DeLorean.
Yeah, he got into the DeLorean.
And we see him come back. And we see him kind of like, he has a cane.
Yes, he had a cane with a fist on top.
His like belly.
Yeah, he breaks the cane while he's trying to get out of the DeLorean, and the top part of it breaks off and falls onto the floorboards of the car. And
they get back in. They have Jennifer. They're going to fly back to 1985 because they fixed the future, which this is where you start to get into physics of time travel. Because if he's traveled back into time and changed 1955, and they're about to go back to the alternate timeline.
Yeah, into the alternate 1985.
2015 have started changing itself while they were there.
That is a good question. Now, there is an explanation that Zemeckis and Gale actually brought up. When I was rewatching these movies the other day, on the special features of the Back to the Future 3 on the 4K set, there's a frequently asked questions thing on there. And so one of the questions was when Doc and Marty go back to 1985. And it's an alternate 1985 because Biff had taken the almanac to his younger self, and that changed the future. So wouldn't he return when he comes back to 2015? Wouldn't he have returned to an alternate 2015? That was the question. And their answer was he did, because there was a deleted scene. Well, it was an extension of the scene of him getting out of the DeLorean. There was a part of that they deleted, which was shortly after getting out of the DeLorean, we see him fade away, just like Marty was doing in the first movie when his parents were not getting together.
Okay.
So, meaning that when he went back to give himself the almanac, when Biff went back to give himself the almanac, he changed the future, and old man Biff from 2015 ceased to exist because it was an alternate 2015 that he returned to. Now, they took out that part of the scene, so it's not super clear, but yeah.
I mean, at that point, it tells too much right away about what's about to happen.
Yeah, exactly.
But was that scene in, I know, the original DVD release? It had a bunch of deleted scenes. Was that one of them? I think that was one of them.
It was one of them, because I remember watching that deleted scene.
Because there's that scene, and then the other big one that they had was from the first Back to the Future movie. At dinner, they have all that peanut brittle.
Yeah.
Surfing.
Yeah.
Right. And which is like always kind of a weird thing. Is he's like, well, why they pour all this peanut butter at dinner? And there's a really good scene that explains it. Anyway. But yeah, so that's kind of that quick thing that on math is like, yeah, like shouldn't everything, and maybe it does all slowly fade away because it's an alternate future. They get back, and they're like, well, first they're like, are we back? And a big jumbo jet flies over them instead of flying cars.
Yep.
And then they're back.
And they know they're back in 1985.
Because like you automatically see it yourself because like looks like a demilitarized zone, like it looks like a third world country.
Yep. And they get back to Jennifer's house, and
there's
Marty
bars at the windows.
Carries because she had passed out when she saw her older self. Because her older self had gotten home from the grocery store, and they both fainted when they saw each other. And so Doc ended up carrying Jennifer back to the DeLorean. And so she was unconscious when they made their trip back to 1985. So Marty took her and put her on the porch swing outside of her house and noticed that there were bars on the windows. And there were not bars on the windows before. So that was a hint that things were not quite how they had been.
And then they're driving around, like every house is up for sale. They get to Marty's house, and there's a lock on the gate.
Yeah.
Just to hop over it.
But there was never a lock on the gate before, so he thinks that's weird. So he hops over it, climbs into his bedroom window, but it's not his bedroom.
Some teen girl.
He ends up falling onto the bed of a teen girl, who
She's
then
screaming,
wakes up,
obviously.
screams, and her dad comes into the room with a baseball bat. And
obviously he's angry.
Thinks that Marty was sent by the developers. That
buy all the houses.
Yeah.
There's a Michael Jackson poster in that bedroom as well, which is kind of a foreshadow as well.
Yeah.
There's a lot of little shout outs to different things.
Yeah, especially since Marty had a Huey Lewis in the News poster.
Yes.
Not Michael Jackson.
But yeah, he runs off. He's like, and the dad's screaming, "We're not selling." And then, Marty is just so confused and wants to know what year it is. You go over the wrong year. Picks up the newspaper.
So he
front porch.
When he's running down the street,
right.
He picks up newspaper, and it turns out that he's at Principal Strickland's house, who is no longer the principal because the school closed down years ago.
And then I guess there's still...
Then there's a drive-by. A gang comes by to try to kill Strickland. But Strickland's got a shotgun, and he's shooting back at him. And Marty's kind of stuck in the crossfire. And
then he's so confused, and he goes down to, like, downtown Hill Valley again. This is the part I kind of think, it's kind of, I noticed it this time watching it. It's kind of like in It's a Wonderful Life, where Jimmy Stewart, when he gets to see the alternate timeline where he doesn't exist, town's terrible. References that very heavily. And I guess you could say that I don't know if this was the intention. Maybe they talked about this in the commentary. I would have missed it back then. But, Biff has a casino and seems like a real estate magnate. It's got this massive casino that he built into the clock tower.
Yes, in a clock tower. And, it's this
still
big
not
casino
working.
hotel.
He never fixed it.
Called Biff Tannen's Pleasure Paradise Hotel and Casino. And, it's built into the clock tower. So it's built onto the clock tower.
Power plants and toxic dump and all these other things. And I get how, obviously, as we find out, he will use the almanac to win a bunch of money betting on horses and other sporting events. But it seems like his plan to just completely destroy Hill Valley doesn't make a lot of sense.
Was it really his plan to destroy Hill Valley, though?
I guess
it was really just his plan to be rich, and then him being rich ended up making everybody else lose their jobs because they spent all their money at his casino, and so they lost their jobs, lost their houses.
Yeah.
I don't know that destroying Hill Valley was really his plan. It was more just a result of his actions.
Fair enough. I just wonder at some point we would think that, the town's a total dump. Like, why would people continue to, maybe they're not. I don't know. I mean, you have a failing hotel, but
and this is also where we find
it's still 1985. He still has all the sports results. Anyway,
but this is also where we meet his three buddies from the 50s, their 1985 selves,
still his lackeys,
who are still his lackeys. One of whom is played by Billy Zane.
Billy Zane.
We had Jason Scott Lee in 2015, and we have Billy Zane in 1985. So.
We can do this the easy way or the hard way.
The easy way. I never understood that. Because why put that in there? Like, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. And then they knock him out. And as he's blacking out, you just hear the easy way. I never understood why they put that in there.
Even think about it. He just says it, and then they just hit him over the head.
Yeah. But why bother putting over that voiceover of the easy way? It never made any sense to me. It's great. I love it. But it never made any sense to me.
Anyway, but they knock him out. And then he wakes up and he hears his mom's voice.
Yep.
Again, he thinks he's dreaming, just like he did in the first.
He's dreaming.
So he wakes up and there's his mom with her boobs hanging.
Yes, with huge fake boobs. And that surprises Marty.
You're so big.
And it turns out that Lorraine, in this alternate 1985, is married to Biff.
And at first, she's calling Biff his father. That's not really true. You find out.
No. You find out shortly after that Biff is his stepfather. And that his father, George, died a few years before. And
that's where he meets back up with Doc. Because they separated. Because Doc dropped him off.
But before all
his mom told him where his dad was buried. And Biff hits his mom, and obviously Marty tries to defend her, but the lackeys are there, and they hold him back. Biff, punches Marty in the gut, and then they leave. Yeah, and then that's when she tells him about, you hear it that it sounds like they beat him up a lot because she's like, they must have hit you really hard this time if you don't remember your dad died.
Yeah, so she tells him what cemetery he's buried in. Marty goes to Doc's house and finds him. Finds him at the cemetery.
Doc has been committed.
Yes.
So now we have the two headlines we're talking about. You have one talking about George being shot.
Yes, George McFly being murdered. And we have
Doc Brown being committed.
Yes, Dr. Emmett Brown committed.
So they're obviously the two things they want to change, along with just that alternate timeline completely, right? And Doc explains that there must have been the split in their timeline. Because everyone else that they are encountering would not remember the 1985 that they remember.
But Doc does have an idea of how the split happened, because he knew that old Biff took the sports almanac back to young Biff because he found the bag that the almanac was in the DeLorean, and inside the bag was the receipt for the almanac. And he found old man Biff's cane, the top of his cane.
Yep.
And so that's how he knew that it was old Biff that did it. Then Marty is given the mission to go and find out when old man Biff gave young Biff the almanac.
And so he goes. And old man Biff's in a hot tub with...
Well, he's not old man Biff yet. He's still 1985 Biff now.
Yeah. Middle-aged
Biff. Mid Biff. He's in a hot tub with a couple of ladies.
Watching The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
Was Good, Bad, and the Ugly, or was it A Fistful of Dollars?
No, it's Fistful of Dollars.
Yes, it was A Fistful of Dollars.
Yes.
And he's commenting on the makeshift bulletproof vest that Clint Eastwood
iron
had
that
in there, which is a little foreshadowing for the third movie, which we'll get to when we get to that movie. But yeah, he's commenting on the metal plate that Clint Eastwood, the man with no name, was wearing under his poncho when he was in the showdown. But anyway, that's when Marty comes in and
turns off the TV.
Throws the remote into the hot tub, so it's just floating there.
Basically just says the words Gray Sports Almanac and kicks the chicks out of the hot tub.
And then
Biff tells him the story
about how this crazy old codger with a cane showed up in 1955.
And he tells him the date. November 5th, 1955. Yep. There's always this thing with Marty points within the movies where he almost lets his cover kind of slip that he's from the future, from the past, or from another timeline.
Yeah. Which, I mean, then explains that old Biff didn't change anything in the time machine. He didn't set any dates or anything like that, because that was just the previous date that Marty had gone back to 1955. So maybe old Biff just accidentally activated the time circuits? I don't know. I mean, because Marty accidentally activated the time circuits when he was being chased by the Libyans.
That's true.
So I mean, it's possible that Biff just accidentally did it.
But tells him the whole story, and like old man Biff was aware enough to say that a crazy scientist and a punk kid might try to come back and get it. And I think it's interesting that kind of like that line, like Biff's like, never thought it would be you.
Yeah. And during this conversation, Marty's sort of walking around the room, and he walks up to a tray that has a bunch of matchbooks.
Yes.
That have the Biff Tannen's Pleasure Paradise logo on them. And he takes one and puts it in his pocket. And that's important for the next movie.
Very important for the feature part of the movie. There's just another aspect of this, too, which is interesting. I was just thinking about.
It's not the next movie. Yeah, later in the movie.
But then Biff brings out a gun.
Yep, Biff brings out a gun, and then thinks that it's fitting that two McFlys would be killed by the same gun, revealing that he is the one that murdered George McFly.
And he tells Marty that he owns the police, because they always own the police.
Mm-hmm. So before Biff can shoot Marty picks up the tray that all the matchbooks were on and throws it like a Frisbee.
I was going to say, he throws it like a Frisbee.
And it's got like spikes coming out of the sides of it. Foreshadowing for the third movie. But throws it like a Frisbee, and there's like spikes all around the outside of it, like sharp edges and whatnot.
Yeah, it's like a little like sun. Like a silver sun.
Yeah, and so it ends up getting stuck in the backrest of the chair that's behind Biff's head, because Biff dodges it. And
he dodges off. Biff hits a silent alarm to his little buddies.
And they chase Marty.
They chase him, and then
Marty runs up to the roof.
He's smart enough to switch where he's going up the steps and goes up the roof. But Biff sees the door closing.
And follows Marty up the roof.
Marty's kind of stuck up there.
And so Marty's getting forced closer and closer to the edge of the roof. And then, just before Biff can shoot Marty just steps off the edge of the roof.
Steps off. Biff's like, he killed himself.
But no, Doc was hovering the DeLorean under where Marty was, and he caught him. And so then Biff was knocked out by the opening door of the DeLorean so that Marty could get in.
And then it's like, we gotta go back to 1955. And Doc's like, I don't believe it.
There's something about that day. What was it? Was that like the center of the space-time continuum?
Or just a coincidence?
Yep.
Just a coincidence. So now we have the third act of the movie, right? So you have the first act, which is 15. It's very distinct, and then you move into 1985, also very distinct. And it's kind of funny how both of those are very stylized. And then now we go into 1955, Act 3, which is not as stylized. And it gets interesting because it's a replay in some ways of what just happened in Back to the Future Part 1.
But from somewhat of a different perspective.
Yeah, no, like now, like Marty is the observer of it, right? And obviously we're observing him. And there's obviously you're seeing other things that happen kind of around it. I like kind of the alternate 85. It's funny and it's very distinctive how they film it, just so out there. And there's a whole aspect to this last act that's done really well, because you have this kind of the dual drama of him avoiding himself, something that he just lived like 2 days ago. Right?
Yep.
And then the drama of him having to retrieve the almanac. I like the dual drama of that. And then kind of seeing all of that through another perspective, as you were saying.
So, of course, first, when they get back to 1955, Doc gives Marty some money so that he can get some 50s clothes.
always love this.
Something inconspicuous. Which, of course, Marty decides he's going to buy a leather jacket and a black fedora and sunglasses.
I also like how, remember, at the end of the first movie, he's talking to Doc, and Doc says he's going about 25, 30 years in the future, and he comes back, and obviously, he just discussed all that. But he said before getting the clothes, right, he has to give Marty money.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
And he had the right money. He can't have, like a $20 bill looks different than what it looked in.
Exactly. You can't have a modern $20 bill.
He's got a briefcase full of money.
I always thought that was interesting.
He must have jumped around as well beyond just that initial jump into the future.
Or maybe just throughout his life, he kept some money from each version of money that came out in his lifetime.
Yeah, that's true.
But weren't there some from earlier too, though?
He discovered when he went into the future that it somehow procures some of this older money.
Maybe he bought it all from the antique store.
But, he gives him money that would have been available in the 1950s. Anyway, so Marty finds out. He goes to the only tan he can find, phone book, which is Biff's grandmother. Which I think if she had that last name, she probably married.
Well, no, he doesn't get there. Marty doesn't get there by looking her up in the phone book. He finds Biff after he had gotten his car fixed from being run into the manure truck.
That's right.
And he hides in the back seat under a blanket.
You're right. That's right.
Yeah. And Biff takes him home with him
he gets
unknowingly.
In the garage.
Yep.
But he observes the entire conversation.
Between old Biff and young Biff.
Obviously, young Biff is kind of skeptical about it, which...
until old Biff proves that he has the sports statistics because he plays the game that's on the radio and he predicts the winner.
Which I've always thought was interesting. It seems like they have every sporting event.
Yeah, it's a very thin random almanac. It's like a magazine, but it supposedly has every sporting event for 20 years.
Just regular, it's a college football game.
Or for 50 years.
Listening to on the radio. But it's got every college game from 1955, or really from 1950 to 2000.
Yeah, from 1950 to 2000, I think is what it is. So, yeah, for 50 years worth of sporting events in a little thin magazine-sized almanac. All
the championship games, the bowl games, all your MVP winners, Rookie of the Years, gold medal winners. Who won 1972 gold medal in downhill skiing, right?
I mean, maybe it didn't...
that would make sense.
Maybe it was all in there in the form of just... the scores of the game or something like that, where it's just a list of everything for 50 years and not actually any major information on everything.
I get Biff's reluctance to that. Okay, what's this old dude saying? But I'm also it's interesting how he doesn't get at this point what Biff is probably 17.
Yeah, 17.
And old Biff is 77, right? It's talk about 60 years. You'd think he could see the resemblance.
You'd think.
All right, but Biff's stupid.
I mean, old Biff did tell young Biff that he was a distant relative.
Yes, he did say that, right?
So,
and then young Biff tries to make the joke again about make like a tree and get out of here.
And then he's corrected by old Biff.
Old Biff's like, let's make like a tree and leave. You sound like an
idiot when you get it wrong.
What point did Biff learn the right way to say it?
Yeah, that is a good question. When did Biff learn the right way to say that?
Anyway, so this is all, again, on the date of the dance, right? So when they get back into 1955, it's not over the course of a couple days or a week, all on that date, November 12th. November 5th is the first movie takes place over a week.
Yes. Because Marty originally went back November 5th.
He goes to, and he returns back to 1985 on November 12th. It's all the course of the day, and Biff leaves the garage. And again, at this point, obviously, it's 1955. You don't really have automatic garage doors. It's a padlock.
Yep. So Marty is locked in the garage.
And Doc somehow had the foresight to have walkie-talkies.
Yeah. So Marty calls Doc on the walkie-talkie, tells him where he is.
And Doc is trying to be inconspicuous. He's staying by the DeLorean because a DeLorean would stick out in 1955. He doesn't want to also run into his former self. It's like, I can't make it to after dark. finally, finds a bike and rides there after dark. But Biff has decided to drive to the dance, and Marty's in the car. And they're basically just kind of passing each other. Biff's leaving, and Doc is arriving at the house. When Marty has a silent enough conversation in the back of Biff's car to tell Doc what's going on.
Yeah, but he's whispering very loudly. So Biff should be able to hear him. So, yeah, that never made much sense to me. Why doesn't Biff hear him?
They're on the way, and now Doc has to kind of go back to the time machine. But he does that by driving through the center of town. Encounters himself.
Yes, he encounters himself, because now it is after dark. And he is very careful not to show his face to his younger self, but suggests to his younger self that he asks him if he's doing some sort of weather experiment. But yeah, so younger Doc isn't sure that there's going to be any rain, and older Doc assures him that yes, there will be quite a storm. Rain, wind, lightning, everything. Because he lived through it.
Yeah, just 1 day ago, or 2 days ago, whatever, it's been...
Well, for this Doc, it was 50 years ago.
Actually, for him, it could be longer.
It was 30 years ago.
He's gone through more time.
For this Doc, for old Doc, for Doc Prime, it was 30 years ago that he went through it.
Yes.
Because this is the first time he went back to 1955.
Good point. Sorry, you're correct. Yeah, so, he had to live back through all those 30 years. And then he goes into the future. And again, like we said, we don't know how much time he spent in the future before coming back to get Marty. Because he said he had to track down the exact time of the event that led to Marty Jr. going to jail.
And, he had to have enough time to get a hover conversion done on the DeLorean, which, that can't be a quick thing.
No. He also had major organ replacement surgery.
Yes, he did. Because like you said earlier, he got a new spleen. And who knows what other organs.
It's actually important that they explain that, considering he's kind of jumping around time and all that. And, he probably actually does have some actual age on him. Since, maybe he's born in 1925, right? And 1985, Doc is 60 when he goes into the future. But then now maybe he spent 15 years in the future before coming back.
Maybe.
To get Marty. He might actually be technically 75.
Yeah.
Anyway, so they had their conversation.
Which could then be why he got the facial rejuvenation to make himself look younger.
And then to do the dirty deed with Mary Steenburgen.
But that's not till the next movie. But yeah, so Doc, after running into himself in 1955, cuts to Marty is at the dance. Mm-hmm. Marty Prime is at the dance, trying to get the sports almanac from Biff.
This is also my favorite stuff within the entire trilogy is reliving the dance again. Because Strickland is there, and Strickland's interrogating Biff.
Because he sees him reading the book, reading the almanac, and he takes it from him, looks through it, ooh, sports statistics, huh? And takes him to his office and throws the almanac in the trash.
Marty's in there. Strickland is drinking probably whiskey or something in his coffee mug.
Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, Marty is hiding under his desk. I guess at this point, the almanac is on his desk. So when Marty's reaching up to try to get it, Strickland moves his chair back and pins his hand to the desk, and then picks up the almanac, throws it in the trash, and walks out. Marty grabs the almanac out of the trash, thinking that he just accomplished his mission. And this is where it's important that the antique dealer was mentioning the dust jacket, because he finds out that when he opens up the almanac, it's not the almanac. Biff had taken the dust jacket off of the almanac and put it on his copy of Ooh La La magazine.
The two of them fit perfectly together.
So, yeah, he's looking through a gentleman's magazine with a bunch of lingerie-clad women in it. And so he learns that...
he's freaking out. It's how's he going to get this? How's he going to find Biff again, right? Which, of course, he needs to try to remember everything that just happened. He can easily find Biff because he knows where Biff's going to be.
He knows where Biff's going to be. He knows Biff is about to be punched out by George.
Yep.
So he runs to the parking lot where he sees George knock Biff out.
Which he wants to see it because when it actually happened, he was locked in a trunk.
Yeah. So he finally gets to see it. And so he runs up.
And we say finally, it's 48 hours later.
Yeah. Yeah. So, so he runs up and takes the almanac off of Biff's unconscious body. And in comes probably my favorite unnamed side character in the entire trilogy.
I'll let you do it because
the
your
guy,
voice work is terrific.
The guy who is so sure that Marty just stole Biff's wallet. I think he took his wallet. He doesn't say wallet. He says wallet. But he keeps on repeating, did he just take that guy's wallet? I think he took his wallet. But it's after Marty runs away. And he's like, did he just take his wallet? I think he just took his wallet. He took his wallet. And then just after, like, when people are done listening to him, he's just so sure. He's just looking around like, I think he took his wallet. It's like the wallet guy. It's like he is, I think, my favorite unnamed side character in the whole trilogy.
He seems so proud of himself about it, too.
He's so proud that he deciphered that.
But who is this guy?
I don't know.
Right? I don't think he goes to Hill Valley High School.
I don't think so either.
Because in the first one, everyone's so excited that George fucking...
It's okay. We never established any language rules on this podcast. Say what you're going to say.
George punched him out. George. No. Like, there's people congratulating him at the dance. Like, he should run for class president. Why would anyone care if anyone stole Biff's wallet?
Yeah.
He's been stealing the lunch money for the last 15 years. And he's like, I think he stole his wallet.
I think he took his wallet.
I love it because, like, there's all this that's going around it, right? He's like the one new character within all that stuff going on in 1955. Because the rest of it from there is Biff's friends, his lackeys. They see Marty again, but he's in a different costume then. The costume, whatever I forget the word, what they say. Like, he changed clothing or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And, like, the Odyssey after him, they're seeing two different Martys.
Yeah, because they see him on stage when he's playing guitar with Marvin Berry and the Starlighters.
Yeah, because, like, they see him in his leather getup. He gets into, like, the auditorium and then he hides. And then they see him up on stage and they're really confused.
And he's wearing a suit.
Right? And, we're just kind of observing everything else that kind of happened from a slightly different perspective. And then
so
they decide to go just off stage so they can jump him.
Yeah, so they can jump him
as he leaves.
And Marty Prime is hiding up in the rafters. He's hiding up on the catwalk above the stage and sees them down there backstage waiting to jump the other Marty, the Marty from the first movie. And before they can jump him, he drops sandbags on their heads and knocks them out. So past Marty notices these three guys unconscious on the floor and just sort of steps over them. Doesn't really think much of it. Just sort of walks past them, just steps over them and keeps going. Because, of course, he's got to get back to Doc so that he can go back to the future. Right. He can go back to 1985.
And Marty's able to slip by them, and he's kind of waiting outside. And it's interesting because he kind of wants to observe himself talking with his parents, which ends up not being a good idea because Biff has recovered from being punched out. And they're having a whole conversation, and those doors that have like the little square windows at the top, so we can kind of see what's going on outside and inside. We're seeing something that we saw in the last movie, and Biff talking with him and antagonizes him. And once again, he calls Marty a chicken.
And nobody.
Marty's about to leave, and instead of leaving, he goes back. That's when, obviously, Marty has to leave to get the DeLorean, bust the doors, and he knocks himself out.
And the almanac goes flying, and Biff gets it back.
Doesn't knock himself. He stuns him, I guess.
Yeah.
He's not really knocked out.
And so Biff gets the almanac back. And what we didn't mention earlier in 2015, which is now becoming important, was after the whole hoverboard chase, Marty went to give the little girl back her hoverboard that he had taken from her, and she told him to keep it because she has a pit bull now, because she took Biff's pit bull hoverboard. And so Marty got a free hoverboard.
Becomes really one of the most important props of the entire series.
Yeah.
And something that it's like the one thing that Marty takes back 2015. They throw out the almanac, which gets recovered.
Doc has a problem with him taking the almanac back, but he has no problem with him taking a hoverboard back from the future.
Anyway,
I mean, come Back to the Future 3, Doc is very glad that Marty took the hoverboard back with him. But
yes,
we'll get into that in the next movie.
No, Marty goes back to Doc and let Biff get the best of me and all this. And they track Biff down. They know that he's going back. So Marty was in the car. He knows the route back to Biff's house. So they hover. The DeLorean's hovering over this town in California in 1955. I'm sure there's probably some UFO report.
Yep.
About some type of flying object in the sky.
So they decided they're going to cut Biff off, and Marty's going to get the almanac from him.
Yep. And they land right before there's this tunnel, which we don't see in the first movie, right? We don't see the tunnel. They name the tunnel in the movie. I don't recall. Obviously, Marty has the hoverboard, so he can kind of try to be sneaky and hang on to the car like he does with a skateboard. Yeah,
so he's hanging on the car, trying to stay out of Biff's mirrors so that Biff can't see him. And Biff's got the almanac on the dash.
Yeah, so obviously he's going to have to get through the passenger door to get it. That's not the, you can be sneaky, but up to a point.
Yeah. Once you open up the car door, it's kind of obvious you're there. So Biff sees Marty and swerves, tries to ram him into the wall of the tunnel. Marty drops back to the back of the car to avoid getting smashed.
He's got the hoverboard, so
he's got the hoverboard.
The hoverboard is designed to strap onto your feet. So, he's able to use that to his advantage. Yes. As he could do on a skateboard where he can be screwed.
Yeah, so during all this crazy driving to try to take Marty out, the almanac gets picked up by a gust of wind that then puts it on the other side of the windshield, up on the hood of the car. And,
I don't think we've really talked about it, but Biff has a convertible.
Yes, Biff has a convertible.
So that's how it's able to get over.
It's the same convertible he was driving in the first movie when he ran into the back of a manure truck and filled the entire car with
Marty
manure.
Can kind of hang on to the sides easily, everything.
So because the hoverboard is actually attached to Marty's foot, when Biff tries to run him into the wall again, Marty can put the hoverboard up against the wall and sort of flip over the car. And while he's going over, he grabs the almanac and then tries to get out of the way of Biff. But Biff is charging toward him in a car. It's a lot faster than Marty can go on a hoverboard.
He's in the middle of an open tunnel with a car. So now he's got to kind of outrun it, which with a car, that's going to be hard.
Yeah. And
that open space.
So Doc, when he was flying the DeLorean from behind the billboard that he had hit it behind,
which we got to remember,
one of the wheels got caught on the flags that were on there.
Lion Estates.
Yes.
Which was a brand new development of houses. So they have all kind of flags.
Yeah,
and all,
flag banner things that are out there.
For houses or cars, to try to sell stuff, right? So that's kind of a small, important piece, but it's there.
Yeah, and so
when on the other side of the tunnel.
Yeah, so while Doc was flying up from behind the billboard, one of the wheels got caught on that flag banner that was there, so he ended up dragging that with him. And now here's where Marty is about to get run over by Biff, and then that flag banner drops down, and he grabs it, and it's Doc pulling him away to safety. But have you heard this theory that is out there about how Doc knew when to show up at the end of the tunnel there? With that flag banner?
I don't know maybe I know this, maybe I don't.
So there's a theory floating around that Biff actually killed Marty in the tunnel.
Okay.
That he ran over him because Marty couldn't make it to the end of the tunnel in time. And so when Doc discovered Marty's dead body, he went back in time a few minutes so that he could be there in time for Marty to escape. So I don't know. I mean, it could be possible, I guess, but I don't really like that theory all that much.
I don't like it either. You need something more to really support other than thinking there's no way Marty could have survived that or gotten out in time. You're just throwing it out there because you think he didn't get out in time.
Yeah. But, of course, after Doc flies Marty to safety, Biff just happens to run into the back of another manure truck. And get manure dumped all over his car again and himself.
The manure truck wasn't there when he was driving into the tunnel.
No, it wasn't.
Remember, he went through the tunnel and turned around.
Yeah.
So now he's going the other way.
Yeah, he's going the other direction.
Out of the tunnel that he had just gotten.
Yeah, and they didn't pass a manure truck on the way in there. But now there's a manure truck there because Biff has to run into a manure truck. Now, keep in mind, this is the same day that he got his car back from being cleaned up from the last manure truck he ran into. So yeah.
He runs the manure truck, and
so Marty goes. He
go back,
grabs
to Lion Estates.
Yeah, they go back to Lion Estates. Marty finds a trash can. He puts the almanac in there, sprays lighter fluid on there, lights it on fire.
Yep, he uses a match from.
Yes, he uses a match from the matchbook that he took.
Palace.
Yes. He used a matchbook from the match from the matchbook that he took from Biff's Pleasure Paradise.
And then it changes to Biff's auto detailing.
Yeah, so that's how he knew that 1985 was back to normal.
Right.
That it wasn't going to be the alternate.
Doc sees that his headline has changed. He's been commended.
Yes, he's been commended instead of committed. And instead of a picture of him in a straitjacket, it's him in the same, with his arms in the same position as he would be in a straitjacket, but he's just shaking two people's hands at the same time.
The other headline about Marty's dad is that he gets honored.
Yes, George McFly honored instead of George McFly murdered. What was he honored for? Maybe his book, A Match Made in Space?
Well, yeah. So remember in 1985, at the end of the first one, it says that it's his first novel.
Yeah. So maybe he was honored because maybe it became a New York Times bestseller.
Right. But then again, that would have been, they describe in the movie, 12 years since he'd been murdered?
Something like that, yeah.
So in 1973, which would have been before the first novel, would have been a headline from 1973.
Yeah, but the new headline, yes, it would have been a 1973 newspaper.
Maybe it was like some short story or
something
else he had published.
Yeah, maybe.
You can have a short story that's published, and then becomes a big deal that you get a novel published.
Maybe it was. Maybe the novel was based off of that short story.
Yeah.
Yeah, the short story maybe was the precursor to the novel. He just expanded on it. But anyway, so before Doc can land to get Marty to take him back to 1985, lightning strikes the DeLorean, and it jumps somewhere in time. Disappears.
He's not going 88 miles an hour.
Yeah. I always wondered that too, but also, you know how the flames that come out when it goes back in time, they sort of make a squiggly thing, like sort of a couple of sixes, basically, little loops in there. That's also explained by Zemeckis and Gale in that frequently asked questions thing, where it did actually go 88 miles per hour in a spin.
Okay.
So when the lightning struck it, it basically activated it sent the 1.21 gigawatts of electricity into the flux capacitor and caused the DeLorean to somewhat malfunction, and it spun at 88 miles per hour. And that's how it went back in time.
Okay.
So it did make it up to 88 miles per hour. It was just, instead of going forward, it was spinning. And that's why the flames are in like a loop-de-loop pattern.
Gotcha. I guess I could buy that.
So yeah. Then, of course, Marty thinks that he's stranded in 1955. And it starts to rain, and a car pulls up.
And then a car shows up. It's Western Union.
And the Western Union guy was played by the dad in Freaks and Geeks.
Yes.
Can't think of his name at the moment.
I can't. He's such a good actor.
He is. He's a great actor.
He plays that role so well.
Yes, he does. But he has a telegram for Marty that he and his buddies have been placing bets on whether or not Marty would actually be there, because they've had it
70 years.
Yeah, they've had it for 70 years. They've had it since 1885, and they were given express instructions to deliver it at that exact day, at that exact time, at that exact place.
I get that would be something that within that office would be a big, 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 big deal.
Yeah.
And he opens it up, and it's a letter from Doc. And he's spent the last 7 months in 1885.
Joe Flaherty,
okay,
is the Western Union man's name, and just so I think he took his wallet guy. That's Wesley Mann, and he is credited as CPR Kid.
Right, because Marty says that he's performing CPR.
Because Marty says CPR? He knows CPR, and he's like, "What's CPR?" But yeah, if you look at his picture on IMDb, he looks exactly like an older version of the. I think he took his wallet. He's definitely the same guy.
It's just so weird. Like, he's, again, like, through all of that, he's like the one new character.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But,
Doc. And Doc's been living in 1885 that he gets sent to.
Yeah, so he's been living for 7 or 8 months.
7 to 8 months.
8 months.
Something like that.
In 1885. I don't know. It was several months.
Yeah.
In 1885.
It was early 1885 that he got sent to.
He's taken a job.
He spent most of 1885 in Hill Valley, as we'll find out, like the early years of Hill Valley.
Yeah. He's become a blacksmith in 1885.
And there's more instructions in the letter that we find out in the third movie.
Yes.
Very soon.
But so the movie ends with Marty running back to the town square right after Doc is celebrating sending Marty back to 1985 at the end of the first movie.
There's a few things with this. So go back to the scene at the school where Biff takes back the almanac, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then Marty runs off and he knows he needs to get to downtown Hill Valley, right? To get back to the DeLorean so he can get back to 1985, right?
Yeah, because
time's very much of the essence.
Because Marty knocked himself out.
Yes.
Because Marty trying to get back to the DeLorean to go back to 1985 is the one that threw the door open into Marty Prime's face and knocked Marty Prime back.
Yeah. So Marty's going, you have 1955 Marty, right? Because he needs to get back very quickly. He doesn't have a lot of time. Marty Prime then has to spend this time trying to get the almanac back. They go destroy the almanac. Then all of that happens where Doc gets sent to 1885. This is the outskirts of town. This was established in the first movie, right?
Yeah.
He then runs back probably 3 miles, 4 miles or something like that to get there right after 1955 Marty goes back to 1985. It just seems like that timing shouldn't line up like that to me.
Yeah.
Because he comes in like 15 seconds after
Marty goes to 1985. Especially since when Marty in the first movie when Doc sends him back to 1985, it hadn't started pouring yet.
Right.
But when Marty is visited by the Western Union guy, the rain's coming down hard.
It's pouring rain. And they do this Back to the Future Part 3. It's still pouring throughout the night.
Yeah.
It doesn't really abate.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's a small little quibble. But you see it because it's raining hard.
But yeah, so Doc is celebrating having just sent
the light of the headlight from the Western Union guy.
Yeah, he does.
To read.
Yeah, because it's dark and it's rainy. And it's amazing that paper held up against that rain because it was old paper.
So there's only one guy that can help me now.
Yeah, so he runs back to town square where he knows Doc is.
He doesn't ask for a ride. He could ask for a ride back.
Yeah, he could have. But no, he just decided to run. He decided to run it. I guess he was trying to make up for being too late in the first movie when he was trying to run from the DeLorean back to Lone Pine Mall. But
yeah, we love the scene of him being sent to 1985 again. Doc is celebrating it.
He's dancing in the middle of the street, and then all of a sudden, Marty Prime comes running around the corner, dressed differently than he was.
Of course, Doc is obviously shocked by it.
Yeah, Doc is shocked by it.
Which, by the way, we haven't really talked about.
He's like, I just sent you to the future.
There's several scenes. What was that?
He's like, I just sent you to the future. And then Marty says, but I'm back, Doc. I'm back from the future.
This is going to be shocking, too. I mean, obviously he's going to find out. And we'll get into that.
Yes, and then...
But that's the end. That's the end of it.
No, then to be concluded comes up on the screen.
Right, yeah. So, and this came out, if we're watching this...
Yeah, it was only a few months between movies, wasn't it? Between the releases?
Yeah, so...
Because they filmed both of them at the same time.
They filmed them at the same time.
Yeah, they filmed 2 and 3 at the same time.
As we said, there's all the foreshadowing in it.
Yeah.
Right? So I looked it up. I can't remember the exact date. It was probably like 6 months or so.
Yeah, it was only a few months between.
Back to the Future Part 2 was a holiday release in 89. I think it was like really around Thanksgiving. And then Part 3, they waited to it was like a May release, June release. Right? So they did a 5 or 6 month thing. Right? They did the one around the holidays and the one in December.
Okay. Kind of like the way that they did.
At the end of it, they show clips of Back to the Future Part 3.
They do. They give sort of a. It's kind of a trailer, but kind of just a clip show of.
It's more like
be like, hey, here's what we have to look forward to.
Next time on Lost.
Yeah. Or with Doctor Who, how they would do that for a while on Doctor Who episodes to fill time. They would give a little preview of the next episode.
I don't know. I used to do all the time with episodes, right? I don't know now. because like all the best stuff is like streaming. They do week to week, and so they don't give the clips. So like like he recently watched Andor, right? You're not getting clips for next week's episode. But if you're not old enough to remember, it used to be when you had episodic or serial TV, especially for like not necessarily for like sitcoms or whatever, but especially like Lost or X-Files and stuff like that. They might give you brief clips.
Yeah, they would give you sometimes they would be like next time on whatever show, so that you would tune in next time.
So the end of Back to the Future Part 2, that's basically what they give you. Like, this is what's going to be in Back to the Future Part 3. And, they don't give away a whole lot. They just show that it's in the Old West. And, enough of like minor action sequences, right? But yeah, there's a few other things. I was thinking about that as we just talked at the end there that we didn't get into. We obviously see Michael J. Fox is like within 4 years he's got a little bit older.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
And what's funny is like he actually grew a little bit between the movies.
Yes, he did.
Which is why you see Doc and Marty running back and forth of each other sometimes to not show that their height was closer than what it was.
Yeah.
And it's funny because like when Michael J. Fox did Back to the Future, I mean, like he was past 18, not past the age where most people stop growing, but he did grow a little bit more. But I thought it was a good way to end the middle part of it, right? Like, because it's a good kind of like shocking ending, right? They're able to restore 1985, but oh, whoops. Doc goes back into the 1880s with the DeLorean. So Marty's actually still stuck in 1955. Right? Like, what's going to happen? How's he going to get to 1885? Because it's not like he can wait 70, it's not like he can stay in time. And if you've seen all of them, you know what kind of happens next with it.
So
it was definitely a good way to kind of get people invested to watch the third one, because sometimes it can be hard to get people hooked in the third one. What do you do with the third one? Especially a lot of times, like trilogy, some trilogies, obviously, it is like the whole arc. Not always, right? It's like, okay, this is all played out. What are we doing with the third movie? And that was a good way to like really get people to kind of hook into it, and done well. Because it was like 4 years between the first and the second, I think, as it was, which is action, especially for like a kind of action, kind of comedy, fantasy-oriented movie, a decent amount of time. Usually 2 to 3 years max. 4 years is a little bit longer. It doesn't have the magic of the first movie, but it's good in its own right. And I think part of it is like I think part of it is because they do have those separate time periods. It's a movie with a time machine.
Yeah.
And they get to see different time periods with this one, right? And they play them so differently. And the movie's not that long. It's like an hour 40, hour 45 minutes. And it feels like, it's longer, not in the way that because, it's kind of boring. Because each period is so distinct, each set so distinct from each other, that it's its own little piece that, it allows it to kind of feel like you're watching different aspects of it, different point of views. It's enjoyable. I always remember, this is not long after one first seeing, because I remember seeing it in theaters, like I said last time, that after the third one came out, my parents and my brother enjoyed the third one a lot more. Second one. And the second one has, it's strange in a lot of ways. The features are very strange kind of feature. You've got this highly stylized, still dark alternate present day, right? And then the past is it's almost a retelling of it, just from a different point of view. It's an interesting way to go ahead with the second part of the series. And it's actually kind of daring in a way. It doesn't all work, but yeah, they definitely took some chances with it. I'm speaking about that right now. I'm thinking about it. I think the third one's a little bit safer with what it does.
Yeah, I mean, the third one is pretty much, there's some 1955 stuff at the beginning, but the majority of the movie is a whole new time period.
Yeah,
that hasn't been explored before.
Stuff at the beginning, like you said. At the end, you get a little bit of 1985. But 90% of the movie is 1885. And we'll get into that when we start talking about the next one. But yeah, it's definitely a departure from what the other two do. And they could have easily just have done the rest of the second one just totally in the future, right? But they kind of go into the future, go into an alternate present, and then go back to the past and they just live. That's kind of bold. It's different. Yeah. It's not. I think if I had been watching that in 1989, I'm saying let's say 15 when the first one comes out, then say about the new one. I don't know if I would have thought go in that direction. Like I thought, like you'd say just kind of going into a blind, kind of done this whole future, alternate present, and the past, what you just watched in the other movie. Kind of an alternate view of the past. And they do it well. It's all seamless, and Michael J. Fox and Christopher Lloyd are really good, like tandem together.
They really are. Yeah.
We haven't really talked a lot about that in either episode.
But they work off each other.
They
well.
have really good chemistry. They work off really, really well. You buy into this aspect, like especially once you kind of even get to the end of the second movie. I mean, there's parts there where, like, yeah, you kind of think, okay, yeah, like Michael J. Fox is not really a teenager. It's hard to think of his character being a teenager, but kind of that mentor-mentee kind of like relationship they have with each other, but also friends, really deep bond of friendship they have, all works together really well, and you buy it completely. In terms of movies, it's the best either of them really do. I mean, they obviously both have other really good roles, both between TV and movies.
Yeah, but it's definitely the most memorable for both of them. They did.
It's hard, they play off each other so well. They both just kind of live within those characters and become the characters. You invest in it enough that, you're ready for that third one to see what happens. Yeah. Because you don't want, it's funny. Like, you obviously don't want Marty staying at 55 because Jennifer's still on that porch swing.
Yeah, in 1985, which
right?
which Marty was concerned about that because they left Jennifer and Einstein in 1985, in the alternate 1985, and Doc assures him that when they change things back to normal, everything will change around Jennifer and Einstein.
Right. They're
and they will end up in the proper 1985.
Part of the first act of the movie, and they just drop her off at the beginning of the second act and don't see her again.
Yeah. In fact, you don't see her again until the end of the third movie.
Yes.
But
anyway,
we'll get into all that in the next episode.
But you want to get back to that? Yeah, it's done well. We're ready for it. We want to know what happens in the third one, which is all you can ask for. Especially, if you're doing a third movie, it's all you can ask for the second movie is to want the third one. Yeah. Because sometimes, a lot of times you get a sequel, and it's like, it's really, okay. Like, I know it's going to make a lot of money, but Avatar sequel?
Yeah, but see, the thing with Avatar sequel is it's 12 years after the first one came out that they're finally doing a sequel for it.
Which is like the most successful movie of all time, and I saw it once.
Yeah. You and I saw that one together.
We did.
And I wasn't that impressed with it. I mean, yeah, it was cool. They did cool things with the 3D in there, but other than it just being a cool 3D adventure, I really wasn't a big fan of the movie.
And I like James Cameron.
I do too.
I liked James Cameron. I don't know. I even kind of like Titanic to a certain degree.
Yeah, I mean, James Cameron does some good stuff. He makes some good movies. I'm a fan of his, but I don't know why he puts so much into Avatar. Again. And he made some groundbreaking advances in 3D filming and stuff like that. Developed new cameras and everything to film Avatar. But yeah, anyway, I don't know why we're talking about Avatar on a Back to the Future podcast episode.
Anyway, Back to the Future Part 2. It's a solid sequel. There's some stuff in it that doesn't work completely for me, but I watched it again recently. Like, oh yeah, it's always good to go back to because the performances are great. We've talked about Biff a lot. We haven't really even talked about Thomas Wilson. He portrays all the different Biffs and his family members. He does such a great job. Like, he's part of why, he does a really good villain for these movies.
And growing up, Back to the Future 2, when I was a kid, it was my favorite of the trilogy, strictly because of the 2015 sequence. When I was little, I loved that whole portion of the movie. Yeah, no, it's each one is so different from each other and done well. And I could see some people like, oh, I just love the alternate timeline. Or like, oh, it's... And I think as a younger audience member, I think that Future 2015, because it's like, we don't even talk cinematography-wise in terms of like
the color palette they use, right?
Yeah.
They're all so different. They had this really bright feature, right? Which when you kind of think about it, wasn't that bright but some of the stuff they're talking about. It was dark, gritty, grimy, like downtown. It's like, yeah. And then you just kind of have the kind of classic color tone of the 50s, right? There's so much like that. And I was thinking about it, in some ways, I think overall the first movie is more realistic, but this one kind of took more of like a kind of comic book tone to it, I thought.
I can see that, yeah.
And then when you kind of get into the different time periods, playing the different, they're very vastly different from each other. Anyway, yeah, it's a terrific way to kind of continue on, especially since they weren't planning doing a trilogy.
Yeah, it was going to be a one and done.
It was wildly successful, and sometimes you get that. As I was saying earlier, sometimes you get a movie that's not planned as a potential. Sometimes you have movies that, it's planned maybe a potential sequel, but they don't have everything planned out, and then it's successful, so then they do it. But this, it was just really, like I said, so we one and done, wildly successful. Basically, had to do the sequels. Sometimes when you do that, the sequel's like, eh.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same kind of thing as like The Matrix, where that was supposed to be a one and done. It was supposed to be one movie. They hadn't planned on doing the sequels, and then the first one was such a huge success that they made more.
It made more.
Now, how you feel about the sequels is up to each person, but...
Yeah, we won't touch on that yet.
Yeah.
But pizza ovens and...
Yeah. So
that's all I have to say about that.
Anyway, that's Back to the
Future Part 2.
Back to the Future Part 2. Join us next time for Back to the Future Part 3, where we finish out the trilogy and...
spend some time in the Old West.
Yeah. Who doesn't want to spend time in the Old West? Anyway, thanks for listening. We will see you next time.
See you next time.